All right. Well, hello everyone. We are here today with Trey McIntyre. And Trey has a long history in tech, starting as a designer and animator in 1999, I believe, and moving into web development and later into marketing and managerial roles at Acxiom. Now, Trey's working at Adobe as a senior solution consultant, where he says he's building a team of solution consultants that help clients find solutions with Adobe products. So, welcome to the show, Trey.
Hi. Hello.
So, let's get started with telling us a little bit more about your history.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I've kind of been all over the place here. I was actually an art student in college, studying, computer design, computer animation, things like that. So that's why, the beginning of my professional history was, in commercial animation, that sort of thing. But my first job out of college, where actual, corporate job, I was a front end developer. So I out of necessity had web development skills. So I got a job for a little company that was in the same town, in the college town where I was. And within that, organization, I became a team leader, and then I was a manager of a group, and, did that for a few years and eventually got my MBA while I was doing that. And after that, decided, I wanted to move to New York, and I found Acxiom. They hired me as what they called a customer engineer. And in that role, I was really responsible for assessing client needs and then scoping out, what the, custom development might need to be done to support them on their email platform. And that's kind of how my career started arcing into, the marketing space and marketing technology. I was at Acxiom for almost 10 years, and Acxiom is a great company. They afforded me the ability to really bounce around into lots of different roles. So I started in that, sort of customer engineering type of role, moved into account management, where I was actually managing the relationship with specific accounts and customers, managing teams. They promoted me to a role when I moved to Nashville to run the agency services team there. And then I moved over into product, working with, partners and engineers to develop new marketing tech and advertising tech capabilities there at Acxiom, and then transitioned into product marketing, which was, about messaging and positioning around those products. So it was really exciting, gave me a lot of great exposure to a lot of different teams, a lot of different, experiences, including, leadership roles, and customer facing roles, things like that. But I really actively avoided sales. But when I decided to leave Acxiom and I went to Oracle, I actually joined a sales organization as a solutions consultant and realized that I really loved it. And I was at Oracle for a little while, and then now joined Adobe in a similar role. And so now I'm an individual contributor at Adobe, working supporting sales teams in the technical part of the sales process. So and it's really exciting. I like I said, I avoided sales needlessly for a long time and realized I really like it now.
Very cool. Let's talk a little bit about some of these roles you've had now at Acxiom. And for there's probably a lot of people who don't know what Acxiom is. Could you explain what is their business? And I know you worked in a different product roles, but how does that? I think you started in email, right? Email marketing, and then
Yeah.
moved into I don't know what the general products are that they have, but could you explain more about that?
Yeah, sure. So Acxiom is a really old company. They were actually one of the first, sort of consumer data companies out there. And they used to mostly specialize in direct mail. So all the mail that, comes in, what would people refer to as junk mail, mail marketing, that sort of thing. And they developed this, consumer data practice. So, when you read articles about consumer data and, used for marketing and advertising and things like that, Acxiom is one of the companies that provides and sells that data. Most of their data comes from public sources. So this is, if you want me to go onto a rant about consumer data and where it comes from and all of that sort of thing, I can. I'll spare you for now, but they mine public sources and compile that. They analyze it to enrich it, and things like that. But at the time when I joined Acxiom back in 2006, they had recently acquired an email business. So going out of, direct mail and expanding more into digital channels, they acquired an email business called Digital Impact. Now, ironically, the company that I was leaving was called Digital Insight. So I left Digital Insight to go to Digital Impact. And so I always get my DIs confused. But Digital Impact was the email marketing company that Acxiom acquired. And so what I was hired into was, this client engineering role around their email platform. But while I was there, Acxiom expanded their business. They started getting to other forms of digital advertising. Started working, more in, the data management platform space and interacting with that. They acquired a company called LiveRamp, which handles connecting data from offline sources to online sources, things like that. Since I left, they've been acquired by another company called IPG, which does a whole bunch of other things, including some advertising agencies and things like that. So they actually span a lot of different industries and verticals. They spun off LiveRamp, by the way. It went out, and they spun off the email business. The email business is now with a company called Zeta Interactive. So it's one of these, medium to large size tech companies that's just operating behind the scenes and doing a lot of business there. And they have a great culture, a lot of great people there. It was a lot of fun working with them.
Okay. It sounds like they focus primarily, though, on marketing and advertising in the digital space. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe they still support some digital marketing, but yeah, these days it's primarily digital and around data.
Okay. And so now you're working at Adobe and as what's that, senior solutions consultant. I guess you help businesses decide what Adobe products to implement and how. Is that in a nutshell? I don't know. It's probably too simplified, but
yeah, kind of. So I am over in a pre-sales role. So I talk to customers who haven't yet bought. I specialize in only 2 of Adobe's products. Adobe has a whole suite of products. So everybody has probably heard of like Photoshop, heard of, Adobe Acrobat. Those are in one side of the business. Adobe actually has a whole digital experience business with a number of products like Adobe Analytics, Adobe Audience Manager, and others. I am what Adobe refers to as an expert solutions consultant, and all that means is I specialize in 2 of our products. So if you ask me about other ones, I can't tell you a whole lot about those. But I talk to customers who are considering a purchase. They're considering buying Adobe Audience Manager or Adobe Experience Platform, and I talk to them about what are your use cases? What are you trying to do? How would it work? What can it do? And help them understand what the product is capable of, what it isn't capable of, and how they would actually use it in their day-to-day business. And the goal, of course, is to sell the product. So it is very much a sales role.
Gotcha. And so what are some of the current projects you're working on at Adobe? I mean, or is it just? I mean, it sounds like it's a constant role of working with new clients, or is this you have like major projects you do on a day basis? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, it is sort of, I wouldn't say constant because the sales cycles are very long. The sales cycle for one of these products, they're enterprise scale products, so the sales cycle can run, anywhere from like 6 to 18 months. So I can be involved with a customer for a very long time and get to know people. But in terms of projects and things that I work on outside of the sales role, like I'm working on right now developing some B2B reporting. So when I approach an account that's a B2B type of company or business to business type of company, and they want to use our product for that, what I do in a sales cycle a lot of times is demonstrate. So I'll actually have the product and say, okay, look, I'm using the product in this way that you may be interested in. So one of the projects I'm working on is developing, some reporting things that are built specifically for like a B2B type of business. Because I interact with customers who tell us what their needs are a lot. I also work pretty closely with the product management team, so the people who are actually building the product. I bring them feedback from the field. Let them know, say, hey, client X, Y, and Z asked for this type of feature, and here's why they need that type of feature, and explain that. So they have asked me to do some alpha testing for some new product features. I also do. We have a team that develops tools specifically around demonstrating products, so I'm working with them and testing out some of those, and just building new sales materials. So for the rest of the solutions consultants on my team, we all pitch in and we develop these slides to help explain the product in a more elegant way. So that's something else that I spend a lot of time doing.
Okay, and so at day-to-day activities, you kind of sounds like you are working. Are you on the calls a lot with your clients, or are you doing research for them? What does that look like?
Yeah, a lot of my time is spent doing calls. There's definitely, I definitely do a lot of calls, especially, right now with everybody locked down, a lot of it's video calls. In past circumstances, in the past, I would do a fair amount of travel and actually go face-to-face. And I like face-to-face meetings because you can read the room, you can see, where are people giving you a confused look about something. You don't have to deal with, people accidentally being on mute and things like that, all the plagues of conference calls. So we do a lot of in-person meetings. Outside of that, yeah, there's a lot of research, where a customer may want to do something and you're like, oh, we can do it, but let me look up exactly how, it works. Like, what are the pieces, needed to be successful with this particular use case or this particular scenario. So yeah, there's a lot of that, a lot of calls, a lot of research, and learning. The products are constantly being developed and changing. So there's a lot of just training myself and using the product, kicking the tires, making sure I understand how it works, so that when I go into a demo, I make it look easy.
So, so maybe we can get a little bit more specifics here. So, like if you were to do like a client, you say usually a lot of times your product, and this is the analytics product, is correct? You're doing Adobe Analytics?
No.
Is that one of them?
No, I'm not. No, I specialize in Adobe Audience Manager and Adobe Experience Platform.
Okay, an Experience Platform. Okay, and those are primarily for, explain a little bit more about those products are, because I'm still a little confused.
Yeah, Adobe Audience Manager. So MarTech is a confusing space. Lots of acronyms, lots of things, and it's even hard for me when I research a company or a competitor when I'm reading their marketing descriptions. It's a head scratcher. Like, what are they talking about? What exactly is it? So I'm going to try to break it down. Adobe Audience Manager is what's called a data management platform. It's a kind of technology that was born out of the digital media online advertising space. And what it lets you do, it lets you bring together lots of different sources of data so that you can build a segment out of it for people that you want to target, and then send it over to what's called the demand side platform, where you actually manage your campaigns. So if you want to bid on ads out, on a particular website, you use your DSP for that. But Audience Manager as a data management platform is where you're bringing all the data together so that you can build those segments and target. And there's a lot of related capabilities to it, but when you break it down, that's what it really comes down to.
So if you're looking at the sales cycle, would that be more of an acquisition, or are you looking at conversion and retention? Is it all three, or it's just focused more on the audience side? Not the audience, or the awareness or whatever.
Yeah. Classically, data management platforms usually play at the top of the funnel. But when you think about, the task of marketing, of building, positive sentiment among users, there is a nurturing aspect to it. You want to reassure customers who have already purchased that they've made the right purchase. So there is that aspect to it. And there's no reason any channel, paid media channels, and things like that can't serve all purposes. So it can be all of them. Most of the ROI from a purchase of, a data management platform like Audience Manager does come from, driving demand and getting acquisition happening, new customer acquisition. But, I think a wise marketer would market to their existing customers to, maintain that positive sentiment, to keep them coming back as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I would imagine in the B2B space, that's very important. I would think that retention is far more important than even acquisition.
Yeah, I like B2B marketing, not just because of my background and having been, a B2B marketer, but it also presents some unique challenges because the scale tends to be very small. The user mindset is very ambiguous. If I market to you at home, if you see a paid media ad for a B2B product at home, you may or may not be in the mindset to think about work at that moment. You just don't know, So B2B marketers have some very peculiar challenges, and especially when it comes to, paid media and digital channels, that I enjoy talking about that with them and talking about how they can address some of those issues. But yeah, it's absolutely critical to make sure that you nurture the customers that you have in a B2B cycle, because acquisition is so lengthy and costly.
So what's life like at Adobe versus some of the other places you've worked at, like the culture? How would you describe the culture at Adobe?
Adobe's culture, it's really fun. There's a lot of really creative people. I think every company also has sort of its subcultures. The engineering teams have their own, type of culture. The sales teams have their own type of culture. You have different, subcultures within it. But broadly, Adobe tends to be very fun, very friendly, and very creative. They, very much encourage people to, use Adobe's Creative Cloud products to, do new products. They like to showcase those things. And it's just I keep using the word fun because it's a fun place with a lot of great people who are really friendly. I find pretty much all of the teams that I work with are highly collaborative. Where I'm as an individual contributor, I don't really see any. I'm sure there's some political situations that happen, but I don't really see them. Mostly I see people willing to roll up their sleeves and jump in and help out. I've seen more of that in other companies. I don't want to, name names, but, it happens to greater or lesser extent. But I would say the defining characteristic of Adobe culture is that of, support and creativity.
That's good. Really cool. Cool. So it sounds like you're pretty happy there.
Yeah. I really like it a lot. And they're another company, as illustrated by my experience at Acxiom, where, like I said, I was there for almost 10 years. But the reason I was there for 10 years is because Acxiom was very, very supportive of, my interest in exploring other areas of the business, learning new skills, learning different things. And Adobe is a similar company. They would rather have somebody, stay in the family, so to speak, and just learn new different things than to leave. And they're very supportive of that.
Nice. I forgot what I was going to add. I had a follow-up question there, and it just slipped my mind. All right, so let's get to some harder questions. I gave you all the easy ones.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so I want you to try to think of some sort of sticky situation or hard problem you've had to deal with on the job. And it could be at any of the jobs you've had. But I want to dig into a little bit of the details about that situation, and in particular to kind of show. And again, this podcast is going to be primarily for students and going through my class, and they might want to, or using my textbook, and might want to know, what are the type of situations that are difficult, but how do you work through them? And so I would like to kind of walk through some of that process. So. Can you think of something like that?
Well, yeah. In my current role. So I'm in a sales role. I can't name names of
Sure.
Which companies in particular, but in my current role, like I said, it is a sales role. I am trying to get people to ultimately buy our product. But I'm supposed to be in also a technical advisor type of role.
Gotcha.
I am supposed to be, someone who takes a clear-eyed look at what a customer's needs are and makes a recommendation that will actually satisfy those needs. And there's a very strong incentive and temptation when you're in sales to spin, to be ambiguous and make things sound like they may be really better than they are. And that's just a tension of being in sales and also, trying to be sort of a consultant, to be a trusted advisor. But being a trusted advisor is something that I enjoy most about my job. And so it's trying to find this nice balance between being very transparent and honest, telling a customer, hey, you want X. The product will not do X. Okay, so we can't, I'm not going to tell you it can, because it can't,
Right.
You can't, it depends on the customer very, very much, but most of the time you can't be that blunt about it, and just be like, no, the product sucks, it won't meet your needs. You have to find a way to say, no, but, you have to find a way to say, it can't do exactly what you describe, but remember that your goal, the use case that you've outlined is X. Here's how the product can help you get to X, without passing through that requirement that you threw out that, maybe it is or maybe it isn't essential to it. So being really transparent with the customer about what is and is not possible has that tension behind it. And so that's the difficulty. You might be in a deal that's right up to the line where the customer is about to, sign a contract. If you can just give a yes answer to this one tiny question, and it's enterprise sales. So there may be millions of dollars on the line. And so that can be pretty tense. It can be, a challenging situation to be in. But I find that it is much better to be upfront. Now, obviously, you want to coordinate with your sales team. My responsibility as part of the sales cycle is to get the tech win. So if you think about how products get sold, the customer has to tick off a lot of boxes, and the tech win is the part of the sale where they want to make sure that it will do what they need it to do. That's the question, the ultimate question I'm trying to get them to answer.
You said tech win? Is that as opposed to like the business win, or is there more than just those two, or is that basically it?
Well, I mean, you can think about your different buyers. There's the financial buyer. They want to make sure that there's ROI. They want to know that if I spend, $2 million on this software package, I'm going to be able to use it on these, marketing efforts, and we expect to be able to drive X amount of lift. And so we'll get our money back on it in, whatever period of time. And that has to make sense to them. So I broadly refer to that as like the business win side of things. In between, and then there's the tech win, which is more of like the IT people, they have to make sure that the speeds and feeds align. Will this work with our current technology and our tools that we have today? Will I be able to work with it? If the IT team doesn't have the resources to be able to, implement or support it, I mean, it may not matter. So you have to be able to say, well, here's how it works. In between sort of the business and tech, and there's overlap. There's the user, the one who is actually hands behind keyboard. Once the IT people have set it up, and the business people have said, okay, go use it. Here's our strategy. There's the people who want to know that it's going to make their life easier on a day-to-day basis. So I kind of address that. So there's a little bit of a handshake between the the business side of the sale and the technology side of the sale, where the sales team wrap it up. But yeah, I generally think of it in terms of the tech win and the business win.
Interesting. Yeah. So in our field, information systems, the one, and we have a phrase called a feasibility analysis, and you may have been familiar. That's more from the company purchasing the software. We'll see, is it feasible the technology? Is it feasible organizationally? Is it feasible economically? And they'll go through, and it sounds like that you're playing one of those roles, but from the sales side is to fit the technology feasibility, but you call it the tech win, to make that match, to make sure that what you do or what your product does matches well their technology resources and capabilities.
Yes, I would say that's accurate. And one of the more challenging questions that I often get, is, what you just described as the organizational feasibility. Do we have, the right people in the seats to actually use this software, organization, or how do we need to a question I get asked is, how should we structure our team to use this effectively? And oftentimes I don't have a great answer for that, because do what you want. I mean,
it's your organization.
Yeah, no. And what Adobe has is Adobe has professional services and other types of consultants that can talk to them about how to do that. And Adobe has this concept of the data-driven operating model, and we help talk customers about that. But for me, I focus on the widgets. Will the widgets work? What do they do? And so I really try to keep my focus pretty narrow. But it's a question that comes up a lot.
And so technologically, what are some of the biggest issues that you've seen to get that tech win?
I think at least in our space, is just general confusion about what products are and what they do. So I mentioned, when I go, because I often have to research competing products and see what is it, what can it do, what can it do, how do we stack up? And a lot of times when you visit, a company's website, you can't tell, you don't know. The marketing language around a particular piece of software tends to, be very, very lofty and make everything sound great and rosy, which is, it's a marketer just trying to, get that. But there's a lot of fine print behind that. And so a lot of times customers will get into a sales cycle and I talk to them about it and they're like, well, how does this compare to X? And I don't know. But neither does the customer. They're not clear on what different things are. The current in vogue acronym is CDP, or Customer Data Platform. Okay. So my other product, so I mentioned Adobe Audience Manager is a data management platform. My other product, Adobe Experience Platform, is often called CDP. But the CDP as a product category is very fuzzy, very, very fuzzy. Solutions that are put into that category just have a wide range of capabilities. And so, for a customer who's shopping for a CDP, it's hard to know whether or not a CDP is actually what they need. And if it is a CDP, what kind of CDP? What is it about a CDP that meets their needs? And so a lot of that ambiguity and confusion can be very, very frustrating. You can really go around and around with a customer about what products are and are not, because sometimes there just aren't clear definitions about things.
Could you try to give a definition of what it is? Because even I'm a little confused.
Not really. I mean,
okay.
Honestly, so there is the distinction between a CDP and a DMP. The one that has the greatest impact on customers is the fact that customer data platforms typically can have directly identifiable information in them. They sort of bridge this gap. So if before the CDP category existed, you had data management platforms wherein all the data is, it's pseudonymous or anonymized. It's all, cookie IDs, device IDs, things like that. And you couldn't look up Trey McIntyre in a DMP. It just wouldn't make any sense. Okay. You wouldn't even know how to identify me because all the identifiers sit on my devices. So a DMP tends to be very, very fast moving and the data is anonymous. Historically, the other type of system that would frequently get used to inform marketing, targeting, bringing data together so that you can do marketing efforts would be like the CRM system or customer relationship management system. And that's where you actually have a database where it's a list of names and email addresses and phone numbers, and you would cut a file out of that and hand it off to, your email provider or, your direct mail provider or, things like this. But CRM systems tend to be really clunky in trying to, reach from that, those addressable systems where you have the directly identifiable information and the digital systems. There tends to be like an intermediary. So this gap, this chasm between the known and the unknown universe created that opportunity where CDPs came in, or these customer data platforms came in. And a lot of like tag management and other sort of technical tools like that sort of evolved into this space where they realized they're like, hey, I have first-party data here. We're not talking about uniting this with anonymous digital data or, inferred, propensity data, things like that you come from where there's more consumer privacy sensitivity around that data. It's very, sort of narrow. It's on, it's the first-party systems and things like that. That's where CDPs sort of evolved into. This gap happened, and they're much more easily or readily able to reach across that gap between the known realm where you have directly identifiable information and the unknown realm where we're talking about, cookies and device IDs and IDs like that. And that's really where they came up out of it. So, when you think about data, and I'm generalizing, by the way, because there's a whole lot of nuance in all of that, but that's kind of the distinction there is like CDPs usually can have, directly identifiable information on them. It's usually very, very focused on first-party data, but you'll find variants. There are some CDPs that have tie-ins to third-party data providers, so you can, enrich your data set with that. Some CDPs focus more on the analytics needs, where you're bringing in lots of first-party data and you need to like generate some intelligence or insight about your customers within that. Others focus on, marketing orchestration, where you're trying to figure out, okay, how can I guide the user down the marketing funnel, to the point of conversion? What are the touch points that I need to make sure happen and have the most influence on, the customer's decision? So like I said, there's a wide range of what counts as a CDP and what they can and can't do. Sure. So part of my job is really to, talk to the customer about like, okay, you said CDP, but let's forget the acronym and let's talk about what it is you're actually trying to accomplish.
Right. That makes sense. Well, it sounds like you've had a lot of different and interesting roles. What for you has been the hardest career choices you've made?
I would say the hardest career choice that I've made is not to pursue leadership roles. Traditionally, you kind of get on a career track and there's this thought that success means, becoming a manager and then becoming a director and then becoming, a senior director and a vice president, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, until you're, dominating the whole world. And I've had leadership roles, I've had management roles. I'm pretty honest with my managers when they ask me about leadership roles, is that it's not a skill that comes easily to me. I even honestly but jokingly tell people that my first attempts at being a leader, being a manager, were not successful. They were not very good. I went about it in some very, very bad ways. I made a lot of mistakes and everything, and I learned from those mistakes. But the thing that I learned the most is that generally speaking, I'm not pursuing management. It's not my goal to manage a team. That's not something that drives job satisfaction for me. So unless being in a leadership role gets me something that does drive more satisfaction, I'm not interested in it. So that's, a pretty clear decision. I mean, in the last year, I had the opportunity to pursue, a management role, and I just told my boss, no, I don't want to do that. That's not it. Please go talk to somebody else on the team. That's not me. So I very much enjoy my individual contributor role and what I do. And so, I just have to be very clear about what it is that drives satisfaction for me in my job, even if that means giving up traditional markers of what it means to be successful in a career.
Do you worry that by giving up that potential role as a manager, that someone else will get in that role that maybe shouldn't be there? That's even worse than you?
Well, I mean, no, I
Okay, fair
no,
enough.
I don't because it's not like I would, oh, I want to be dictator for life because I would be benevolent and somebody else might not be. That's not, like that's not the way that I
Right,
look
right, I
at it.
got you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very, like I said, I'm so fortunate to be at Adobe because the culture here is so collaborative and everything. And, people who step into those roles a lot of times do so only after the people they manage have had some input on the matter. So like I got a new boss, but before I got that new boss, my boss was like, "Hey, what do you think about so-and-so as a manager?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'd work for them. They're, he's a great guy. I think he, all of that." So I definitely had some input on it. So no, I am not very worried about that. And I also, if I were giving my younger self any advice, I would tell myself to be really, really clear about what it is you want and need, from, your next role, from what you're doing, or just even as an employee, when talking to my manager, I need to explain like, hey, sometimes I need the latitude to, work all hours of the night. I had a conflict with a manager early in my career because I was pulling some crazy, crazy hours, but I loved it. I was having a blast, and he kind of scolded me about it. And it really hurt my feelings. And I should have approached it differently and said, "No, dude, I love this. I am not giving you more than I'm getting. So I'm really enjoying this. So don't fight me. Let me work as hard as I want." And so being very clear about what you need out of a job and out of a role, and from a manager, I think is really, really clear, or really, really important. For instance, when I was weighing in on who my next manager would be, one of the things that I pointed out is, I am senior in my role. I know pretty well what I'm doing. I don't need a lot of supervision. I don't need somebody, checking in on me every single day. I just need to know what the goals are and what my assignments are. Like just tell me there's the target, here's your weapon, go. I don't need the step-by-step instruction on how to get there. But other people do. And knowing what your limits are and knowing where you need input and communicating that to your manager and to your leaders is an important skill to develop. And it's something that I work hard at.
Well, that's some good advice. And I was just going to actually kind of follow up with that. If you were giving some advice to, let's say, some current college students interested in digital marketing, pursuing a career in that, what would you advise at this point? Granted, right now it's kind of a difficult situation, but
Yeah.
because there's no jobs and everyone's laying everybody off. But besides that,
Yeah. There's that.
what kind of advice would you give for the new grads or soon to be grads?
I would tell, marketing, it has this glossy veneer. A lot of times people think, marketing is like really sexy and they get to plan these neat campaigns and they're going to go to, Nice to get their lions and, things like that, and they're, all of this. And marketing is a lot more than just the part that is more traditionally associated with advertising. And so the advice that I would give is that if you want to do marketing well, if you want to make sure that the cool, sexy marketing plans you develop actually succeed, don't be afraid of the technology. And especially anymore today, Adobe posts all kinds of videos and tutorials on YouTube. LinkedIn Learning has a lot of content as well. There are usually student accounts for software packages and things like that you can get your hands on. And if you're specifically interested in digital marketing, a lot of times there are developer accounts and things like that you can get for free. So I would say use those resources. Do not be scared of the technology and make sure that you understand. You don't need to understand all the way down to compiling software, but you do need to understand in a general level about how the data works. I would say, and I'm the last, I was an art major. I was an art major because I was trying to avoid the math classes. Let me be super clear. I was not trying to do math, but you need the math. You need to have a basic understanding of how, mathematical concepts work and everything. So I would say as tempting as it is to try to avoid these, sort of tough subjects of technology and mathematics, I would say spend the time. Spend the time to focus on that. And then that way, like I said, when you're devising this, sexy marketing plan, you can know how to measure success. How do you know if it's working? What do you need to tweak to make sure it is successful? Things like that. So spend a little time to invest and get the knowledge so that you're comfortable having a conversation, with the person. If there's a BI person who's doing your visualizations and your reporting, you can ask them some smart questions and make sure you understand what's going on. Same way when you're evaluating a software package, if I walk into the room and I'm showing a demo to you, you can ask me about, identity management and how some of those things work. So don't be afraid of the technology. Don't be afraid of the math. People are often more than happy to explain things, and there are a ton of resources out there. Personally, I love explaining things, so that's one of my great joys when I walk into a meeting and somebody's like, wait, tell me about, and I'm like, yes, this is why I love my job. This is what I want to do. So, ask the questions and get in there, and don't be afraid of the nerdy stuff. Get on it.
Nice. I appreciate that. That's some great advice. And I would probably reiterate, that's probably one of the reasons why I love my job is I get to explain stuff to people. So,
there was a moment before after I got my MBA and before I moved and joined Acxiom, where I almost considered a career in academia. I had bought a house because it was the peak of the housing bubble, and I'm wise, I guess, in my investments. So I ended up saying, oh no, I need a paycheck and can't donate the time to academia right now to work my way into a solid financial footing. But yeah, I love the teaching aspect, and sales is a good way to get that in. Being a consultant is a good way to scratch that itch.
Sounds cool. Well, Trey, that wraps up about all the questions I have for you. Do you have any questions for me?
No. Where can I listen to our podcast when it's published?
Well, my goal is to get this up on YouTube, and I will send you a link once I get it up. Although the video is probably going to be a little bit less than spectacular, but I'm working through those issues, as you know. Because right now all I see is the phone, not your face is like a little box at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's all right. Well, but yeah, give me a couple weeks to process this and get some things lined up, and I will have this published and I'll send it to you. So.
All right. Sounds great. Well, thank you very much. This was fun.
Yes, it was great. Thanks a lot, Trey. And I bet we are done. So.
All right.